Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's nice to see so many people here to listen to me talk about sales and operational planning in logistics functions. So my name's Connie. I've been working at Ocado Group for just over a year now, but I'll put the spoilers up front because I'm sure some of you are logistics experts. I am not. So I came to the logistics industry for the first time when I started at Ocado Group. Previously, I've worked in tech companies in and around London and have done a whole host of different data roles, led data teams, wider data teams. So this was a very interesting role for me because I just love data problems, and we had some. So I'm going to talk you through how we went about solving some of these with sales and operational planning. So firstly, most of you will be familiar with Ocado and Ocado Group, but I'll just give you an overview just in case you aren't. So conventional kind of retail, how it had been done previously, was all about going into a store and buying things. And there was a wave around 25 years ago when Ocado first started delivering their technology, creating their technology, where we basically said that instead of doing it in that method, the way that we could do it instead would be to try and automate it, send it through centralized distribution centers that can be state of the art, they can be as automated as we can make them, they can minimize human as much as possible, and then from there they get delivered straight to the customer. So in essence, you're creating a much more operationally efficient system from the off. You don't have to rely on multiple points of failure as well as it moves through different networks. So Ocado kind of like spearheaded this, and you'll see now that almost every retail company is kind of like offering a delivery service as part of their offering too. Ocado specifically, we have developed a lot over the last 25 years. We now work with a variety of different partners all over the world. I'm going to be talking to you today mainly about our UK partnerships that my team in logistics own. So it's a bit complicated, so again, bear with me. It's good context for you to have while I'm going through this. Ocado Group is different to Ocado. So if I said to you Ocado, maybe actually not in a room full of data people, if I said to most people Ocado, they'd probably think of the big purple shiny logo on the side of vans, what you would see when you went onto the website in order to order groceries. That's actually a specific subsidiary called Ocado Retail. You might have seen in retail recent years they're owned by M&S as well now, 50%, so it's kind of like a joint ownership with Ocado Group and M&S. The way that kind of functions is that they're actually a partner of ours, a client, instead of actually being incorporated into the main group structure. So when I talk about group here, I'm mainly talking about Ocado Tech Solutions and Ocado Logistics. Tech Solutions make all of the snazzy stuff that you would have seen online. So this is kind of like the automated robots, the self-picking robots that you would have seen. And the way that it works is that Tech Solutions build that. They have all of the product teams, like the tech teams that you would probably normally imagine. And then Ocado Logistics, which is where I work, their role in it is basically delivering the whole UK arm of our partnerships. So for any partner that is within the UK, Ocado Logistics is delivering their groceries. So again, even though it's got that nice purple shiny logo on the side of the van, it's actually Ocado Logistics who are the ones facilitating that actually getting to the customer's door. What's really important now, if we go back to the topic of this presentation, is what are we actually forecasting as part of that? Now, for those of you that will be familiar with sales and operational planning, which I'll dig into in a bit more detail in a second, classically, this is done in companies where the entire process is owned by that one company. So they have kind of like the complete say in everything from the initial demand planning and the acquisition, all the way through to the actual fulfillment of the logistics. We serve much more as kind of like a logistics partner, so more similar to kind of like other logistics partners that you would kind of like couple with to actually do the last mile end of your delivery. Because of that, that leaves us in a really interesting place where actually the demand is forecasted by Ocado Retail or other partners. I'm going to use Ocado Retail because it's the most contextualized for people to follow along with, but partners basically give us their growth forecasts. So we end up getting kind of like order numbers, amount that they're predicting from a basket perspective, all of those come through from our partners. We don't have any control on the acquisition or the growth. We just kind of get target demand that we're working towards. So then when I'm talking about forecasting from a sales and operational planning perspective, with my team in Ocado Logistics, what we're mainly talking about here is the logistical and supply chain elements. So even though the buyers sit in Ocado Retail, they choose what we will be selling, all of the supply chain and logistics last mile is done with Ocado Logistics. So that's mostly what I'm talking about here when I talk about sales and operational planning. And that's going to be the topic of today's talk as well. So how can we actually forecast this middle section in a way that means we're building the most efficient tech stack as well, we're utilizing as much of the automation and data side as we can, because like I said before, that's where I come from, that's what my specialty was, that's why I was brought into this company, is not because of my years of logistic expertise. I'm sure there's many more people here that can give that more so than I, but it's more about how we actually solve the data problems that go behind it, and that's what I think is really interesting to talk about today. So, brief background, this is not brief. I gave you all of the context so you can read it while I'm talking, but I'll try and make my discussion brief on sales and operational planning. Some of you will be familiar, some of you won't, so I'll just bring you all on the journey. Sales and operational planning is essentially demand and capacity planning that you do in order to set up the most operationally efficient network. So for us, again, like I said, the demand planning side of this is coming from the retailers. Our capacity planning side is basically taking those demand inputs and working out how we serve that network. And the biggest part of sales and operational planning should be the foresight that you get with that. So mainly we're talking here about kind of managing risks or managing opportunities. So obviously from a retail perspective, we want to be looking, at least 3, 6, 9 months out in advance. We have some long-term decisions that we're making. When you need to purchase new vans or HGVs, LGVs, these are really long-term decisions, they're not short-term things. But that scales all the way up to the shorter-term side as well. So we also own all of the workforce planning, the headcount planning and things as well. So the scale of what we're looking at in sales and operational planning is quite broad, but it all falls under the same category. How can we minimize the risk and maximize the opportunity that's available? So forgive me for the cliche, I genuinely just couldn't think of a better way to describe how we've been building this so far. So I joined over a year ago now, and my role since I've joined is basically building up this sales and operational planning function and building it in a data-centric way that means we're scaling for the future. So I'm going to talk to you about all of the different stages, where we're at now, how we've tried to build this up in order to get to the stage where I'm very happy with some of the progress that we're making. Obviously, there's still more to come, but I'll talk you kind of like from the fundamentals up until the kind of like blossoming and nurturing of the plant that we've got to now, which is kind of like the moving into the advanced and the real-time analytics that we're able to do. So, first step, foundational. Now, I'm sure everybody in this room has been in the same situation at some point where you're looking at Excel sheets that were probably created more years ago than you would even like to imagine. They're huge, they're clunky, they don't work very well, they break quite often. We were very much in that position, and the tools were absolutely amazing for the point in time when they were built, which was, again, like I said, this is 25 years in the making, and these tools had not really had major rebuilds since they were first built a long time ago. So that was our first kind of like, our first efficiency that we could see was to take this tooling stack that we've got and really work out what were the core problems with the way that our data was being done right now. I mean, you have the obvious ones, right? Like, we shouldn't be copying, pasting data anywhere. Like, again, a room full of data people, you'd tell me this without even having to, walk into a data conference. But honestly, in some cases, that's where we were having to go back to, was really trying to work out, like, where were the root causes of the inefficiencies that we were actually able to see. So, moving on from that, we were able to start growing. So the first step was to basically work out which data we needed to be able to automate and flow into our data lake. So there's 2 avenues I'm going to talk about a little bit here that were happening in parallel. There was the operational side of what were the big business wins that we needed from this. How do we prioritize what is going to have the most business value from the data initiatives that we were doing for sales and operational planning, versus as a data purist look at it and saying, oh my God, this is all crazy. There's lots of stuff here that we need to change, right? And we need to go back to scratch. Both of those things were true at the same time, but we really had to prioritize what were important for us to look at. Luckily for us, actually, most of the data was already feeding into our BigQuery environment. Like, we were already set up to work with data properly. We just weren't structurally, data-wise, set up to work with data properly. So we had the skill sets that we needed in order to do this. We had the data existing in the world of Ocado in the way that it needed to. It just wasn't going to the right places and accessible by the right people and feeding into the right tables and having the right architecture. So I was quite lucky to be able to start with like a very good base, to be honest, that we could build on in terms of like what we actually wanted. I've got a specific example here that I'm going to follow all the way through just so that you can have some context as to some of the work that we did. So the people side, the workforce management, is one of our biggest P&L cost lines, because for us in logistics, it's over 13,000 hourly paid employees that we have, and our people systems did not talk to each other, firstly. They didn't feed in to our centralized data lake, so we weren't able to extract the level of information that we wanted. We were having to do quite manual data pulls every time we wanted data. My team, being amazing analysts, wanting to kind of like feed it into proper BigQuery environments, that we're having to do this all manually. So there were some really quick wins that we could see, both from, again, like the business value perspective that I was talking about, but also from the like time-saving point of view as well. We actually, as a whole company-wide initiative, completely redeveloped the way that our people systems worked, our people management systems. So we based this on the structure from a data point of view of what we wanted to see, but we worked with the people team and the kind of like HR teams to make sure that we were actually developing a better suite of tools just all round that were better in total for the whole business, which was really cool. So just from the efficiencies that we've got from the people side alone at the minute, we have actually been able to save over 5 million so far over the last year. Again, like we're talking with the numbers that we're talking about, 13,000 people. We obviously have a turnover rate as part of that as well. We're actually talking about a lot of people that are coming in and out of our doors. And actually just by making sure that we're forecasting that, by having the foresight of ingesting the data properly, we're able to save some big money really quickly, which was really, really great. What that has also led us to is being able to move on to the more advanced stuff. So when I'm talking about this kind of like growing area here, I'm mainly just talking about getting this data set up in a way that means it's going to the right place, right? On top of that, we, like I said at the beginning, all that we should be looking to do with sales and operational planning, or what we should be prioritizing, is where are the risks, where are the opportunities? So as we move into the advanced area, you can kind of see exactly what we did with this. I'll keep using the kind of like workforce management as an example, and then I'll talk about more broadly what we ended up doing. So based on that data that we just ingested, we were already saving money because it was more operationally efficient in every way. The people teams, our teams, data teams, everything was flowing more effectively. We were able to forecast better. What do I actually mean by forecast better, right? Because that kind of is a bit, like elusive. I'm not really meaning anything when I say forecasting people better. One of our biggest holes that we had from an analytical perspective and forecasting perspective were levers. So being able to actually measure accurately how were levers happening in the business and what did this look like. Like I said, we had really big data pools, which was great because we're talking about a lot of people and we're talking about a lot of turnover as well, which actually helps from like a lever forecasting point of view. If I'm talking to the rest of the business, obviously I'm not saying more levers is better, but purely selfishly from trying to forecast kind of like levers as a model, it was really good that we had so much lever data. From that, we were actually able to build quite specific length of service modeling. So we took this and actually took machine learning models on top. So we're now working in different length of service bands. So as an example, people who are within their first 2 weeks, within their first 4 weeks, have a different expected leaver rate than people that had been in the company for 3 years. There's lots of different bands in between that, and the model predicts between all of those different bands. But just as an example, those two categories of people have far different lever profiles than each other. Based on the new starters that we then were bringing in, our tools now are automated to the point where that cycle is completely kind of like continuous. So we basically model with the expected new starters that we're bringing in, how many of those we are expecting to leave, and hence how many new starters we are going to need to potentially backfill those levers, right? Because it's cyclical. That for us, again, on top of the cost savings that I've just mentioned, has in itself saved us over 500K in the last year as well. So again, we're talking about really big numbers just from being able to actually use the data we already had. This data already existed in our system. We just weren't set up in order to actually be able to forecast based on this data accurately. So we were lucky from that point of view. This isn't actually that much work. Like I said, we were able to do all of this within a year, but it was just making sure that the data is structured in the right way in order for us to be able to do this risk planning on top. You can see I put this kind of like green arrow to kind of, in my opinion, show where I think that we are right now in terms of the planning that we're able to do. I mean, like I said at the beginning, there's definitely much more that we have to do. The biggest, most interesting next step that we've got for sales operational planning is the real-time low latency data that we're working on at the minute. So for midterm planning, like people, low latency data is not all that important. Like it doesn't matter if there's a delay between my data being ingested for somebody that is going to start in a couple of days' time and then might leave at a certain period. I'm able to accurately enough get that information that it's not super critical. However, there are aspects of what we do in sales and operational planning where low latency data is really important. So routing is probably the best example of this, right? We want to make sure that the routes that we're setting up, and hence the people we're assigning to routes, and hence the people that my team are deciding that we need to employ, all of those things are as accurate as possible in the moment in time that they're happening. Routes are downloaded between the working hours. The routes are downloaded pretty much at all parts in that cycle. Every 30 minutes between 5:30 and midnight, our routes are getting re-optimized and we're replanning those routes. Obviously, there are people constraints as to making sure people have the best employee experience as well. We're not shuffling people around at the last minute, but as much as possible, we want our teams to be able to prioritize the people needed at every point in time, depending on the most up-to-date information that we've got from a routing point of view. So that's one of the areas that we're exploring at the minute to try and assess kind of like future risk. And again, what's really interesting about that is we can then take that and apply it to the future forecasting, because that's interesting in the moment and it's operational, which is really great. But ultimately what that will enable us to do is actually look to the future at the way that we're planning our routes and make better, hopefully, decisions as to how we're setting up in the first place, the people that we're putting on those routes, how we're optimizing the whole system based on all of the information that we've had to date, which ultimately is what we should be trying to do with sales and operational planning. So, high-level overview of what I've discussed and why I think it's important. So, hopefully I've given you enough context to understand what we've been trying to do. But the big takeaway that I really want to give from this is around being able to utilize the tech stack that you're building now in your, whether it be logistics or supply chain, any kind of logistics-based environment, how you can best set that up for the future forecasting and sales and operational planning. What I would say from my own personal experience, I found it really, really helpful not coming in from a logistics background. I know that sounds mental, and I probably would say that because I didn't, but genuinely being able to come in and not be kind of like immediately obstructed by these are the operational constraints that are in front of us and this is what we need to work with, that was actually really freeing for us when we were trying to work out the best structure that we needed to work with data, because actually I didn't know what good should look like, to be honest, so I didn't really have that as like a starting point. I was just going on my previous experience in data and what I think data was needed for, and previous forecasting experience, to try and work out what I think we should have needed, and we kind of built it from there. The other takeaway that I had, and again, for companies that are trying to do this all internally, I think hopefully this should be easier, but also is equally as important, is around building that cohesive pipeline from demand to supply. So I have spoken a lot about kind of the steps that I've made from a supply point of view, our kind of like capacity planning that we've done. Our process can absolutely be even better if we had full cohesion with, for example, our retailers' data. So we are working really closely with the retailers to have a very good relationship from feeding it through from demand to supply, but whether sitting in separate businesses, separate entities, it's really difficult for us to get the data flow in a way that would mean that it can feed into our forecasting tools in the most effective way. That is something that if you're doing it internally, you should hopefully be in a much better position to build from scratch, which would, I think, be an improvement on our current process. But either way, being able to forecast based on the demand, wherever that comes from, I think what's really important is that you are building those data practices from scratch for the whole system, having a look and seeing what those big risks are and those big business opportunities while you're going about building it. They were the things that really meant we were immediately being able to show value to the company. And then thinking about how you actually build the best tech stack based off of that. I am, again, very lucky to work with an amazing set of data engineers in the business as well. So they've been really helpful with all the hierarchy building that we've done. But we also have kind of more analytics engineers on our side that are working with them to understand the structure of what is needed. And again, it's so far has just worked really well. And we've been very lucky in that we're able to immediately sell it to the business, right? We had an immediate business case because we could save them money straight away. Thanks very much. Happy if there's any questions as well. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, good question. So the question was, what tech stack are we using? So our data ingestion is largely done with Fivetran. We have DBT that sits over the top that then my analysts are becoming upskilled. So again, analytics engineering is something that we're kind of quite new to. It's something that we're developing skill set wise in the business at the minute. My analysts are becoming more and more familiar with DBT. Mainly we're using it for lineage at the minute, to be honest, but it's something that we're looking to try and build out that skill set a bit more internally. We have a Google environment, so we use GCP mainly for our analytics. We use Tableau as our front-end visualization as well, so it links really nicely based on the setup that we've got so far. It does mean from a low latency perspective, we're having to think about how we can work through our current setup, because our tech stack isn't set up to do that at the minute, which is why we are not really that far in that final step. But yeah, we used our legacy systems, but made them better, I was going to say. Maybe that's unfair. We rebuilt them, right? So we used what was already there. We were already using GCP. We already had data in the Google environment, but we just made sure that we were building a centralized data model from scratch in a different project, in a different environment, using the data that was already there, but actually trying to ingest it properly and build it properly from scratch. So we obviously couldn't stop working on the BAU stuff that we were doing at the same time, so we were having to do both things at the same time, fix the plane while it's flying, right? So we were building this centralized data model, trying to ingest it properly at the same time as using our current tech stack, so that's why we kept the same kind of like overlay together. But I think that actually worked quite well for us, to be honest, because we were able to use some of what was already there, but just improve on it. Yes. Sorry. Oh, sorry, there's a mic, I think.
How did you quantify the cost savings?
Yes, that is a great question. So I'm also quite lucky in that the cost I'm talking about here is people, and I used that example on purpose because it was the most easy for me to give you the cost savings. With people, we have very specific P&L lines that we're able to measure very easily and effectively. We also have a lot of kind of like comparables for new starter and kind of like loss of efficiency that you get with new starters as well. So with the people side, we had all of the data that we needed to accurately measure the costs. There are other examples I could have given you where I don't have a cost, to be completely honest, because they are much harder to measure. But with people, it's quite easy because you have it as a specific P&L line, and we also have the different variables of things like a new starter means this much loss of efficiency, which equals this much cost. So we were able to kind of like sum that up together to get to the final cost values. Which also, that's a good one for a business case, if anybody's interested, because if you're trying to sell it to your senior leadership, right, being able to accurately measure the cost is a massive win. People, you are much more easily able to measure the cost of, so it's something that we were able to like really tangentially like put some value on, which was really good for us.
You mentioned like optimizing the routes
Yep.
frequently. Hello. You mentioned optimizing the routes
Yes.
that like the trucks take frequently, and I imagine it's really complex, right? Like optimizing the routes and then planning what needs to go in which truck to go where.
Yeah.
Who does that? Is that like a human? Is that an AI, or is that like an algorithm?
If that was a human, I would absolutely hate to be them. That's for sure. No, it's definitely so. That's kind of what Ocado Group based their main like technology build on from the start, was building those algorithms and those optimizations. So if you go back to the kind of like, this chart that I showed at the beginning. So Ocado Tech Solutions are the ones that build all of that automation. So it's the same. I was going to call it software. That makes it sound much less exciting than it actually is. It's kind of the same platform that does all of the route optimization, as does things like the automated picking in warehouses. It's all part of the same system. So at every point in time, a route is somewhere in that system, whether it be kind of like pre-optimization, so it's not been kind of finally, it's not had its final download, so it's not kind of in its final form, all the way up to it being delivered to somebody's door. At any point in time, an order is in that system, and it can either be pre-optimization. It then goes into warehouses, which are then automated. Quite a lot of that's automated to pick as well, so that's all done through the same process. It's really, really clever because then the system basically knows exactly where to put that. So it tells it basically exactly which fan to put it on, and a human at that point moves it into the right place, but they're told in front of them exactly what to do. Take this exact thing and put it in this exact place, and it goes straight into the van then in that setup. It's really clever how it works. So definitely not people, definitely completely automated from that point. But the bit that we haven't then done the feedback loop on is how we take that data and make our decision making from a people point of view better because of it. So that setup is really efficient, works really well, completely automated. How do we then take all of the amazing data that sits within that whole cycle that I've just mentioned, work out which are the bits we need to extract from that in order to make our processes better for future people planning, as an example. Yes?
Hi. Sorry, that's very weird. If Ocado Technology Solutions has already built up this infrastructure...
Sorry, I actually don't have headphones, so I can't hear the headphones. Sorry. No. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, if Ocado Technology Solutions already has that kind of infrastructure and knowledge built in, are you selling that same knowledge or tech outside of Ocado, beyond Ocado Logistics and retail?
Yeah, great question. So that's exactly what we do. So the base tech that we sell to retail partners all over the world is what I've just described, the warehouse setup and automation. So that's basically the entire, it's called Ocado Smart Platform, and it's basically everything from giving you a front-end website basically that you can white label to actually order from. You would have to do all of your own buying and things on top of that, so you choose which products. Again, that's different for every country, etc. But the kind of like front end of how you purchase, all the way through to the warehouse automation, that will be done by the system that Ocado Tech would sell. What isn't the same for UK partners and other countries' partners is the logistics part. So basically, how does that order actually end up getting delivered to the customer? That part can either be, in our case, handled by Ocado Logistics, or it's handled by the partner themselves. So they will quite often have their own basically logistics function that chooses how many people to hire, chooses what tools and things to build from their side. One thing I would say is we actually do it really well relative to a lot of our other partners. So quite often we're working very closely with our partners to give them what they need to be successful as well. It's in everybody's best interest if our partners are successful too. If we have a really good way of doing a certain planning process, whether it be working out how many vans we have to buy or whether it be knowing which people we have to hire and where to put them on shift. If we have a very good way of doing that, we should absolutely be sharing that with the partners. So although they don't pay for that formally, it's kind of, we do kind of help them get set up for success from the logistics point of view. What they actually pay for is the tech side, the actual kind of like warehouse automation setup.
Hi. You mentioned about lever profiling.
Yeah.
So in my company, we have a similar use case which we are trying to handle, and it's a mess currently. So just wanted to know a little bit about like what kind of data or what kind of main insights you have found regarding the lever profiling, like someone who has joined recently or someone who is already there for 3 years, and what steps has been taken.
Yeah, good question. So what I would say to that is it isn't easy. So I feel that we have, I'll answer your question in a second, but really quickly, we have an entire project, continuous, ongoing within the company to try and work on this and improve it further, because there's a data side, but then there's also the how do you action that and make changes on it, which is the bit that I think is actually more difficult. From like a how did we actually go about it, how did we get the data, what does the data show so far? Unsurprisingly, it shows that the earlier you are in your kind of tenants, like in your career with Ocado, the more likely you are to leave. That is definitely true. We see within the first 12 weeks kind of exponentially high higher leaver rates, to be honest. Our industry is just a bit more transactional. I'm not sure kind of the industry that you work in, but we, as across the entire industry, like logistics-wise, do have much higher leaver rates than quite a lot of other industries. So we know that the first 12 weeks, quite a lot based on what we've done so far, and this has been data and the research we've done with our machine learning, but also with talking to people, like we've done basically user research at the same time as well and tried to understand. Quite a lot of that is basically because they are quite often looking at other jobs at the same time. It's, like it's not specifically, and although it's something that I would love to be able to stand here and say, it's not because they want to really work for Ocado that they've necessarily come and took that job, right? So it's not necessarily, it's not something that they're doing there are lots of other opportunities for them to go and do a very similar job in exactly the same conditions pretty much. So there are things that we can control and things that we can't. The pieces that we try to focus on from a modeling in data point of view were some of the more demographic data. So anonymized from a GDPR point of view, we made it kind of very safe on that, but we worked out demographically how we could be targeting the best people from an LOS, length of service point of view, to try and minimize those early leavers that we were seeing. So in that first category. Again, really easy one I can explain. People under 21, even more likely to leave. And then people that were under 21 and in their first 12 weeks were, I don't think I'm allowed to give you the exact percentage, very, very, very likely to leave is probably what I would say to that. So again, there's specific demographic profiling that we can do from that to try and improve on it. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I would say, is actually talk to people as well. And then also demographics were the biggest two that we found. Cool.
Could you all take your rubbish with you, please? Thank you. And so make your way out this way.